Okay, so why is this one taking such a long period then? This one's up to...
Well, here, it was routed for review. They made the wrong call.
Okay, it's just really disturbing, and I think for anybody, not only the committee, but anybody watching, indeed the wider public, that it's taken this committee so many occasions to try and take a singular video down. And that, you know, I just think that it's not really given me any more confidence today that we are going to come back in a few months' time and that these processes are going to be, the processes that you've explained are actually going to be firmly in place.
Where are the reviewers based?
They're all over the world. These particular viewers that made this call, I believe one was in Europe. I think 2 or 3 other individuals were involved. I'm not sure where they were based.
So you don't even know where these 4 individuals were based?
No, I don't.
Do you have any reviewers based in the United Kingdom?
I believe we have a large team of reviewers based in Ireland.
Which is not in the United Kingdom.
Right, but I'm not sure. We have, of course, full-time employees that work on this, but if you're asking me about contractors that we use, I'm not sure if they're based in the UK or not.
So you put some of these decisions out to contract?
Certainly, and that's part of the trouble here, is that these videos were going to people who are not able to identify them. That's why they're going to be routed to specialists, and why the reviewers, general reviewers, are going to be given training in order to identify these videos better.
Sorry, so let me clarify. So these weren't actually YouTube employees who were actually reviewing and making the decisions. It was done through a contract.
On these 4 cases, I do not know.
So 6 days on from me raising this and sending you the letter on behalf of the committee, you still don't even know whether the individuals involved, where they were based, or whether they were actually YouTube employees, or whether they were contracted out. How many of the people who make these decisions are actually not YouTube employees?
Generally, I don't know a number.
But a significant number of the people who are taking these decisions aren't even employed by your company?
In the first instance, we have several layers of review. Many of the initial review happens through contractors who just route it to the right specialists. Once you get higher and higher up the ladder of review, that's when you get more full-time employees from the company who specialize in these videos.
And do you do the training for these contractors, or is that contracted out as well?
I do not know who conducts the training. I certainly know that our trust and safety teams are intimately involved in designing the curriculum.
Okay, this is new information for us, and I have to say it's shocking. It's really shocking that you don't even know where your review teams are based, who they are, whether they are done through contract to other companies or organisations, or whether it is done by YouTube. Now, all of the statements that you gave us at the beginning of this evidence session about how much it mattered to you personally, if these things are actually being implemented by staff on your behalf, or by people on your behalf, it is frankly shocking that you seem to know so little about who they are, where they are, what training they've had, or even whether they are employed by your organisation. You had no response to that?
I've been brought on to deal with counterterrorism policy. I work on it at a very high level. Our trust and safety teams are charged with making sure the reviewers get the training that they need.
Do you think that might be part of the problem? That you're just dealing with some policy stuff, but you're not actually looking at the implementation, and it is the implementation which is failing so catastrophically?
In this instance, certainly the human reviewers made the incorrect call.
John Woodcock.
Thank you. I mean, all of us want to believe that this is an area which can be improved, but I just question why you would come to the committee not being able to answer basic questions, such basic questions about the process surrounding, where you knew you had to come to the committee and give a full apology. Convince me why, if you haven't prepared in such a basic way to answer these questions, which I'd have thought you'd be able to anticipate, why you and your structure can be trusted to actually do the very important tasks for which you personally are responsible.
We are doing everything in our power to make sure that these videos do not remain online. We are committed to hiring over 10,000 people working across the company to identify these videos. We're putting new systems in place. The work of this committee has been instrumental in pushing us to put in place more and more safeguards. And I will continue to make it part of my personal mission to make sure that these kinds of videos do not remain on our platform.
Could you tell us a bit more about what you do know about the training processes? So there is a certain amount which is contracted out. To what kind of organisation? I mean, what are we talking about? Is this do you contract to a large corporation? I mean, how does this work? What's the basic process?
I can't speak to specifics.
You don't know.
But I can talk about the curriculum which I've seen, and it is systematic and rigorous.
Well, that would be helpful. And so, in terms of the curriculum, I mean, what are we and how that is imparted? I mean, are we talking about human to human training here? Are people given a manual? What to become a reviewer? What describe what it is process you go through?
It is human to human training. It's weeks-long process. They are given lists of all the prescribed terrorist organizations and groups. They are asked to look at a series of videos, some that clearly violate our policies, some that are right on the borderline. They're graded on how they do. Once they are passing the grade, once they are able to make proper judgments according to our policies, then we allow them to begin moderating and applying our policies on the platform.
Thank you. So, I mean, my final question was over other prescribed organisations. In that, is it fair for us to assume that, given National Action had been directly raised by the chair of the committee, by this committee, with senior executives, that National Action content would have been right up at the top end of awareness for your company in identifying, and yet there have been these levels of failure. So is there not a danger that actually other content from other prescribed organisations could be worse than the picture that we're getting today about National Action?
It was certainly part of the training. I think the challenge for us as a company is that the highest volume that many of these reviewers see are of the Islamist variety, so they end up being quite good on that kind of terrorist propaganda. The volume from National Action is much lower. We've taken down about 150 National Action videos over the past year. They don't have as many opportunities to identify this kind of content. That's why we want to make sure that in the review process, it is routed to specialists who are able to identify it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm still finding your answers pretty extraordinary, Mr. McCants. I mean, you said a moment ago that you have staff and reviewers in Ireland. So how many are there?
I don't know.
You don't know, but you do have staff there. Are those YouTube staff rather than contractors?
It's both.
It's both, okay.
Yes,
so you're telling me that a staff member in Ireland would not know who the IRA is or the Red Hand Commandos. I mean, I've handed you here a picture of a video, but I'd simply put Red Hand Commando, which is a prescribed organisation on the list that you say has been given to your staff, and it is a video of a masked man carrying a machine gun through the woods, describing Red Hand Commando Ulster's elite. So you're telling me that your staff in Ireland, you know, they wouldn't get that, they wouldn't understand that was a prescribed terrorist organisation because they were a bit too much focused on the Islamist groups?
I can't speak to this particular piece of propaganda, but in general, many of them have had much more experience with the Islamist variety and not as much experience with the far-right videos because the content
I'm not talking about far, I'm talking about Irish and Northern Irish terrorist organisations here, which are well known. Most of them have been around some of them around for 100 years, pretty well known in the public.
I don't know why these particular videos are online.
Okay.
I will certainly take about
are you, I want to be very specific about this, have your reviewers or your contractors systematically searched by entering the names of prescribed organisations into your search engines for the list of prescribed organisations, 74 international terrorist organisations and 14 Northern Irish related?
Yes.
They have. They've put the names of those organisations into your search.
And in order to test our system.
So how is the content still on here then?
That particular content, I do not know. I will have to go back and ask our teams.
There's a huge inconsistency between what you're saying and what we're finding to be the case. Can you provide us with a list of all of your contractors, the names of the corporations and the number of staff employed?
I will bring that request back to Mountain View
So you can't guarantee you'll give us that information?
I am happy to bring that request back to
I
Malcolm.
think we would like information on the number of people who are doing this work through contract, the number of people who are directly employed by YouTube or Google, and also where they are located, as well as some more information about the actual training that they follow. We're going to have to move on in a second to our other session. Just find a quick question from Naz Shah.
Mr McCants, final question from me, or more an observation as well as a question. So I've read your resume, your quite impressive resume around counter-extremism and Islamist extremism in particular. But do you think you were the right person to be appearing before us to give us the questions that we're asking about a far-right group in Great Britain, given everything that we've just discussed?
Counterterrorism specialists tend to, at one hand, work at a comparative level across all of these groups to find their commonalities. And on another level, each of us has our own specialty. When I've been briefing the FBI, briefing the military, I will often draw comparisons to far-right groups, because part of the challenge we find is that when you just focus on the Islamist groups, the audience tends to attribute everything these groups do to religion, and they don't understand that there's a lot of commonalities between these various terrorist groups. So I find that kind of comparison very helpful. I'm much more aware of the far-right groups in the United States, and there is a lot to be learned about how these groups operate online, their similarities and differences.
Perhaps I could make it easy for you, Mr McCants. What I'm struggling to understand is that you're the head of counterterrorism at YouTube, but actually what we're looking at is the transactional issues of your reviewers, of you removing content offline and taking it down. When we had evidence from YouTube in the past, you were very clear. When there's copyrighted material, such as songs, such as albums, the minute they appear, you remove them within minutes. And yet you've got nothing, you've not invested anything to match that kind of copyrighted material. And yet this stuff is dangerous. It leads to people losing their lives. It's illegal. It's a cancer in society, is terrorism. And yet you're not putting the effort into it. And frankly, I feel insulted that YouTube sent you to answer the questions. And this is not about your competence in your field, but actually as an organisation as big as YouTube sends somebody who doesn't know the basic answers to the questions, and yet you've had nearly a week's notice to be answering us.
Ma'am, I share your description of terrorism as a cancer. That's why YouTube is dedicated to removing that content from its platform. And we are putting in place fixes every day, spending millions of dollars to address this problem. Our technology is getting faster, and we are expanding the number of personnel who work on this issue. And we continue to make improvements. Are we perfect? No. Will we be perfect? No. But we are getting better and better.
This isn't about perfection, Mr McCants. This is about you being the wrong person before this committee and not having a clue what you're talking about. That's what I feel has just happened in this evidence session.
Mr McCants, do you think what YouTube is doing by allowing these videos to continue is illegal?
According to UK law, and I am not a lawyer, I don't know, I don't think these videos themselves are illegal, but they are certainly against our policies. We do not allow prescribed organizations, prescribed terrorist organizations, prescribed groups to have a presence on YouTube, and we are doing everything in our power to take them down.
So the prescribing of organisations includes urging people to support these organisations, and these are clearly propaganda videos. So you do not believe that by continuing to host these videos you are doing anything illegal?
If we receive legal notice that this material is illegal, our lawyers review it and then make the appropriate judgment.
Do you think we should start making it illegal, given that you seem to be not capable of taking it down in the current circumstances?
Ma'am, I can't advise you on legal matters, but I can tell you we are seized with dealing with this problem.
Well, we have to move on to other matters. Mr McCants, you were obviously, when we contacted YouTube and Google, we gave your organisation the discretion who you wanted to send, how many people that you wanted to send, and how you wanted to give us evidence. And I think the failing that we have seen today is a corporate one by YouTube and also by Google. The fact is that you are continuing to host illegal organisations. You are continuing to collude with these illegal organisations by providing a platform for their extremism. And your algorithms are continuing to promote radicalisation by promoting more and more extreme organisations. The failing is not simply an accident. The evidence that you have given us today is so weak that I'm afraid this looks like a failure to even do the basics along the way and even to be able to respond to the questions that we have asked. We are grateful for you giving your time today, but we are extremely disappointed by the evidence that you have given. I hope you will take the opportunity to give us some further written evidence that responds to the questions that you are unable to answer, and to give us that written evidence next week. And I also hope that you will go back to both YouTube and Google and say to them that, frankly, the richest organisation in the world should be capable of doing a better job than this on national security and public safety issues. Thank you very much. Next panel of witnesses to come and give evidence to us. This is obviously a big change of inquiry and a change of, I think, the evidence and the